Hey everyone, I just wanted to check in with you as we get started with Unit 6. This is the last unit of the class, so we will be covering the Great Depression to the present. This unit is always interesting to me because it seems like we cover so much ground, just because there are so many sources about the more modern age of history. We have newsreels, we have audio, we have documents, we have all sorts of things from the period of the 1930s to the present. That said, it's a much shorter chronological time frame than some of the other units that we've covered. So for example, Unit 2 went from the earliest peoples through the Pueblo Revolt. That was thousands of years that we were looking at. But one of the differences was that there was far less, or is I should say, far less remaining in the historical record about that earlier period. So just a thought that I was having as we're getting started with this last unit. I hope you're doing well. Please check in with me if you need any help whatsoever. I did want to remind you that, of course, next week is Thanksgiving. Unit 6 is designed such that you can take the week of Thanksgiving off from our class. So it runs for 3 weeks rather than 2 weeks as usual. We'll have the usual assignments. Please remember the journal assignment has changed for Units 5 and 6. Most of you caught that. There were a few who didn't for Unit 5. That's okay. I really enjoy reading your responses to the question of what meant the most to you in the unit, as well as seeing the ways that you're connecting past and present. I think that is one of the most important things that we can take away from a history class is understanding how the past informs the present and the future, but do so critically and carefully. As a couple of you pointed out, contexts change over time. The situation, even if it looks similar between past and present, is never going to be exactly the same. That's one reason that I don't care for the phrase that history repeats itself. I do like a quote that's often misattributed to Mark Twain, which is instead, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. I think that much better captures the realities of all of the contextual things that change from over time and between different places. So again, just some thoughts as we're kind of coming into the end of our course. For the final project, so after we're done with Thanksgiving, we get through we get through the first week of December, which is the last week of Unit 6. Then you'll have what remains of the following week through Friday the 13th. I should have checked that date before I made the video, but I believe it's the 13th. December 13th to submit your work. So your work on the final project, the next couple of things to do is the annotated bibliography. So hopefully you've been finding sources. If you're not sure what kinds of sources you need, please consult the instruction sheet for the final project. I've listed all the different types that you'll need there. If you have trouble finding any of them, you can't find a primary source, for example, or you're struggling with academic secondary sources, and just as an aside, those include journal articles that you can find at the C&M Library's website or books that are published by university presses. I do realize you won't be able to read entire books, but you can use them for reference to look for answers to your research questions. Oftentimes you can read enough of a book that you'll need via Google Books. They always have, well, not always, but most of the time they have previews for the books that you look up there. So that's one option if you're not able to get to the library to check out physical books for the final project. Once you've found your sources, and again, please ask for help whenever you need it along the way, you'll complete an annotated bibliography. And I have some links and suggestions in the assignment instructions about how to format your bibliography. And annotations just mean that you write a short paragraph, 2 to 4 sentences about each of your sources. Those need to be an analytical 2 to 4 sentences, though, because you're going to want to indicate whether or not that source helped you with your research question, what made you find that source to be credible and relevant, and just maybe something brief about the source itself in terms of the information it provides. So not too much detail, but focused on those particular things in the annotations. The idea is that if you annotate your sources in that way, that will help prepare you for the final project itself. Excuse me, a little sniffly. The final project itself is completed on Adobe Spark. The tutorial I have, I believe it's a little bit dated. Spark, the interface looks slightly different now, but um, the steps for adding images, adding text, and all of that is still the same. So if you run into any trouble, again, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to help. What you'll be doing there is, if you want, you can write kind of a traditional research paper where you answer your research questions and present, you answer your research question as your thesis statement, and then use specific evidence, quotes, paraphrases from your sources to support that answer and show how you arrived at that answer. You can format your paper a little differently if you want, so it's not so much of a paper, but instead that it focuses on images and videos and other multimedia types of sources that you can embed in Adobe Spark. So my advice is just be as creative as you can. Do what makes sense to you, with the idea that the requirement is to answer your research question using evidence from the sources, and that you want to make your presentation as interesting as you can. These kinds of projects are things that will go with you because they're digital. They're things that you have control of. It's not something that you're never going to see again once you turn it in, and it's something that again, if you put in all of your creativity, your thought, it might serve you in the future going forward, depending on what field you're going into. So I've gone on a little too long, as I'm wont to do, so I will end the video here. I hope that your week is going well and that you're all getting ready for Thanksgiving, and I'll talk to you soon.